everybody knows.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in. We have some breaking news coming out of Russia and Ukraine, and we also have some breaking news coming out of Washington. Y'all don't want to miss today's show. But further ado, let's get to the news. Let me get this pulled up real quick for y'all. All right.
I am still scanning for breaking news. And also a major attack overall.
And of course, we're going to be covering the breaking news developments as they are occurring live on air, as the Russian Federation just minutes ago has fired an Oreshnik intermediate range ballistic missile from most likely the Chasiv Yar testing range within the area of the Irbm Oblast. And we have also been able to confirm that impacts have been reported within the town of Bila Tserkva within the Kyiv region. We've also been able to cover additionally that major missile attacks are currently being conducted against the capital city of Kyiv inside of Ukraine at this moment as well, in the midst of the IRBM strike that has just hit about 40 miles southwest of the city within the Kyiv region. We are going to be covering these news developments as they are happening live on air, as we've also been able to hear of a breaking news development around the area of the White House, as a large number of shots have been fired near to the area, and snipers, Secret Service, and police detachments have been mobilized into the streets to be able to curtail the situation and also increase security around the White House. In the midst of this, we've also been able to confirm significant Ukrainian strikes in some areas of the Russian Federation, including on the Vostochny Raion naval yard within the port of Novorossiysk, and additionally have significant news emerging out of the Middle East about a possible deal between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran. To cover the information that we have at this moment leading us to this current developing situation right now, with the impact of an Areshnik IRBM MIRV within the city of Bila Tserkva, we were able to hear just a little while ago, before these strikes occurred, that the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv had put out a statement that a major crisis and emergency was going to be unfolding within the area, and that citizens and also U.S. citizens should shelter in place during the meantime and during the next 24 hours, as they had been tipped off by the Russian Federation that there was going to be a highly likely imminent attack on the territory and soil of Ukraine within the Kyiv city area or within the Kyiv Oblast at large. About several hours later, information was confirmed just 20 minutes ago that an Areshnik IRBM appears to have been launched from the Kapustin test range inside of southern Russia, near to the area of the town of Ottobinsk and the Ottobinsk airfield. Most Areshnik IRBMs that have been fired so far at the state of Ukraine, including the attack in the far west of the Ukraine and also on the city of Dnipro in 2023, were both, well, actually 2024, were both conducted by Areshnik IRBMs that were fired from the Kapustin Yar test range and were able to make it to their targets within 20 minutes. At this moment right now, as we are on air, just 20 minutes after the news came out that an Areshnik IRBM had been fired from the Kapustin Yar testing range, we were able to confirm an impact of the IRBM's multiple independent reentry vehicles in the area of the town of Bila Tserkva within the Kyiv Oblast. We have a significant amount of footage to show, and I wasn't able to repost all of the footage that has been coming out so far from the town of the impacts of the MIRV, but we will be using our sources on Twitter and our reposts to be able to show the footage that we do not have on the map here at this moment. But to go through all of the clips that we have, here is all of the footage so far on our map of the IRBM impacts within the town of Bila Tserkva. Here is the clips. Here we can see the incoming MIRVs making their way into the town. This was actually filmed from Kyiv looking towards Bila Tserkva, and then we can see the impacts of the MIRVs over the horizon.
It looks just like the impacts we saw in, I believe it was 2024 when the last Areshnik strike happened on Ukraine. Looks very similar to that footage, but this time, though, it's being fired at a populated area, which is completely different than the last time we saw it. So this is definitely a major escalation.
This is a very significant escalation. Last time we actually saw an Areshnik IRBM strike in Ukraine was during the latter part of 2025, showing that these sorts of attacks are becoming a lot more frequent, as I believe that the last attack that the Russian Federation conducted with an Areshnik IRBM actually attacked a far west city in Ukraine, and it was during the time, I believe it was actually on some sort of a pumping station out here on the E471 highway near Stry, if I'm not mistaken. But the original attack that we saw in 2024 was against the city of Dnipro, where a Areshnik multiple independent reentry vehicle slammed into the central area of the city, causing some minor damage to the buildings within the area, and of course signaling a great deal of nuclear escalation and possible threats of nuclear escalation with the usage of the weapon. This is the closest strike that we've ever seen so far using an Areshnik IRBM towards the city of Kyiv, and this is the first one in recorded history that has hit the Kyiv Oblast. We also have additional footage here, once more, from a security camera showing us the incoming MIRVs. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to get my brain on track here. This happened pretty quickly, but we can see the incoming MIRVs in this clip as well.
Also, is that the noise from the MIRV?
Also, we have breaking news coming in right now, y'all. We have hits in Lebanon from Israel. So strikes are going on in Lebanon right now in Israel. Or, I'm sorry, Israel is doing strikes in Lebanon right now as we speak.
MIRVs coming in? Is that rain noise?
It seems like it might not be. I'm not entirely sure. Because
yeah, it sounds unnatural. That doesn't even sound like the normal environment nearby. So that's why I was wondering if that was the missile, because it sounds like some like loud rain noise out in the distance.
It does sound like that. I think that's something around the area of this camera, because usually these sorts of MIRVs, if they make any sort of a sound, it's going to be some sort of a loud sonic boom. It's not going to be anything that sounds like a loud rushing torrent of water, at least from what we've seen in prior clips from prior attacks. We also were able to get this footage here, which was actually filmed from inside of Bila Tserkva, showing the Oreshnik IRBMs making their way into the area and hitting their target.
Oh my God. Remarkable. Look at that.
Absolutely crazy.
That is wild right there. You can actually see every single element of the MIRV coming in. I've never seen this type of angle of a MIRV coming in. This is actually, it's obviously tragic, but also remarkable at the same time. Play it a little bit and let's see the multiple vehicles coming in real quick. Let's see here.
And we can see
look at that. You can see them. Like there's multiple pieces to each like segment of the missile coming in. That's wild.
And yeah, we can see them right here coming in little clusters and hitting the ground as well. It appears that each cluster was independently targeted to a different area, because we actually see that the impact sites were different from group to group throughout the course of the footage. But once again, confirming and showing to us at the moment the direct impacts that were made from what we're hearing right now within the Bila Tserkva area of the Kyiv Oblast. We also were able to additionally see other footage as well, once again showing us this clip, but this one was a slightly longer version, which is apparently showing us the full film that was made by this camera person who was able to find and film this incoming IRBM strike on the town. And here's that clip. We can see the IRBMs coming in once again.
Also, it must have just been kinetic, because notice there was no ground impact or explosion that we could see, at least from this clip. If there was one, it wasn't visible from this viewpoint right here. So it appears to have been empty warheads, like many people in the chat are pointing out, which was also what we saw the last time Russia used it as well. Now, from what we know, the Oreshnik is nuclear capable, from what we know, but there's never been a nuclear warhead fielded on an Oreshnik in combat use since the weapon was developed. So it appears to be kinetic.
It is kinetic at this moment. From what we know, this is very analogous to the prior two attacks that we have been able to see that the Russian Federation has conducted on Ukraine. The one in Dnipro in 2024 and also the one in late 2025 that attacked western Ukraine. In both of those instances, the warheads or the independent reentry vehicles were not armed with any conventional or nuclear explosives and were only used as a kinetic sort of an attack system, meaning that they have to directly hit their target and with their mere mass alone cause a minimal amount of damage. Still, the idea behind these sorts of uses of the Oreshnik IRBM and its MIRVs is to be able to try and create some sort of an effective deterrence or significant fear within the Ukrainian government that the next Oreshnik launch may not be inert and may actually be conventionally or nuclear armed. Really more so the threat being nuclear armed. I do have to make it incredibly clear, folks, for many people who are doubting the veracity of the footage, that we have seen two attacks just like this in the past, both confirmed by the Ukrainians and the Russians, and both times we never saw any explosions from the warheads. This is authentic footage that we're seeing at this moment right now, and just because it doesn't meet Kurt Cobain or Michael Bay style explosions and lens flares doesn't mean that the footage is not authentic. This is authentic footage by every extent of the measure, and this is showing us right now an active ongoing attack by the Russian Federation with a nuclear capable intermediate range ballistic missile against the state of Ukraine fired from inside the Russian Federation. We can see the continuation of the footage as they continue to look into the distance, and we can actually hear the sonic booms of the MIRVs after some time after they've already impacted.
Знаєте, що це? Це орешник.
Орешник ебанул, точно, разлетел.
Це орешник.
Орешник, оце ж упало.
Це орешник.
We can, of course, hear them quite concerned and startled.
Орешник не збивається, він
Це
падає.
він упав, оце що це не. А що ж це розлетілося на часті?
Оце?
Да.
Артем, на яку їбалу тут, блядь,
But of course, showing us once again the incoming IRBMs and their impacts within the area of Bila Tserkva. Additionally, we have also been able to hear that at the exact same time, a major conventional ballistic missile attack is currently being conducted on the city of Kyiv itself. It appears that one of these videos, this one here, actually shows us what this specific reposter is stated is a Patriot air defense interceptor striking the city of Kyiv, but we're not entirely sure of that at the moment. But we can see here an incoming ordnance slamming into the city. I would generally assume that is more so likely some form of an incoming Iskander or other form of a ballistic or cruise missile that was hitting the city of Kyiv during that clip. We also were additionally able to see more footage here of the strikes inside of Kyiv. But that's the end of those.
Also for the people asking, by the way, I'm seeing a lot of people say, is there any casualties that we're seeing right now? This is happening literally this moment. Like this happened, I think the footage just came out like 25 minutes ago. So this is a very fresh attack. And also the IRBM was just one prong of the attack. We've heard that apparently Kinzels were launched. A whole bunch of different ballistics were launched as well. And this is a very comprehensive attack on Kyiv, Ukraine. So the IRBM is what caught everybody's attention. But overall though, like I would say that the real damage is being done by the normal munitions that Russia uses pretty much all the time. But this is a very large attack. We did hear as well this morning that I covered in the short war video that the U.S. Embassy did warn that there was going to be an attack like this in the next 24-hour period. It turns out it happened a lot faster than everybody expected. It happened literally just hours after they made that announcement. And then also Zelensky was warning about it as well. So it looks like the Russians tried to pull a fast one. They pulled a surprise attack basically as quick as they possibly could.
From what we generally understand, the Ukrainian armed forces do not have a competent or capable way of intercepting hypersonic multiple independent reentry vehicles. Once again, to remind everyone, all independent reentry vehicles are hypersonic at the time of their terminal phase when they're impacting their targets, meaning that at the moment, Ukrainian air defenses and most Western air defenses would be fairly challenged, if not finding it near impossible, to be able to intercept or destroy any of these incoming independent reentry vehicles like we were seeing in the clip by the time that we're watching them. At that point, they're going so fast and generally moving well beyond the capabilities of any air defense system for them to be able to intercept them or create a possible intercept vector to be able to hit the MIRV and then knock it out. For this reason, this is also the significant threat behind such things as intermediate range and intercontinental ballistic missiles, which do use these sorts of MIRV systems, as their independent reentry vehicles are usually traveling at such a high rate of speed that it is near to impossible for them to be successfully intercepted by any ground or air-based air defenses at the point near to impact. We've also been able to hear additionally during this time that the Russian Federation does appear to be under some significant attacks as well by the armed forces of Ukraine, including within the Belgorod region, the Rostov, Mariupol, and also the Kherson Oblast, as well as Novorossiysk, which we were able to get some additional footage out of last night. But in the meantime, Matthew, do we have any other news that's been coming out at this moment on the IRBM attack that has been conducted on Bila Tserkva in the Kyiv region?
So we did get apparently one other video showing it coming in, and it appears to be the moment that some of the multiple reentry warheads kind of like merged off from each other a little bit, or at least it appears like it could show that. But we can show that one right there. It's a brand new clip. And also after this, we do have a little bit of news out of Washington, D.C. right now. As many people also noted in the chat, there's currently a shots fired situation right outside the White House, and all the reporters went running for cover. It was a huge thing. But first of all, let's take a look at what happened in the second piece of footage from Kyiv.
And we see here the multiple independent reentry vehicles making their way towards the town of Bila Tserkva. Once again, this footage is being filmed from the city of Kyiv, which is about 40 miles to the northeast of the impact site. But once again confirming the direct hits within the area and also showing us more confirmed footage of the impacts of the Oreshnik IRBM and its MIRVs within the area. In the meantime, we do have more news coming out at this moment right now of the situation at the White House. And to give you all a little bit of background before we get into this news, because there has quite literally been a whole bunch of major stuff that happened before we went on air right now. Just a little while ago, some sort of a sustained burst of gunfire was heard near to the area of the White House in Washington, D.C., which led to the White House House grounds being put on lockdown. We also understand that reporters that were at the White House were apparently scurrying for some sort of shelter within the building, apparently being escorted by security. And we now understand that snipers are on the roof of the White House. And we're also hearing that there is a significantly large law enforcement presence around the perimeter of the White House at this moment after shots have been fired within the area. And so with that background out of the way, Matthew, what do we have as a development going on in this area at the moment right now?
So apparently there was gunshots heard down the street from the White House. The Secret Service is telling mainstream media that they're investigating reports of shots fired on the corner of 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue, which is literally, I mean, right down the street from the White House. It's not far away whatsoever. I actually heard the moments that the shots rang out. The reporters were reporting from, I think it was the south lawn of the White House, and you could hear in the background just like a whole bunch of shots going off. Like it was nonstop shots going off. So nobody really knows what caused this or who did it or anything like that right now. They're investigating it, but I mean, it sounded like a hell of a scene. Like it didn't sound like just some like person in an argument and they got into a shootout or something. It sounds like they were just letting loose like it was a war zone out there. So we need to know some more details, but apparently, at least according to some sources, apparently the lockdown in the White House has lifted from the looks of it, but they're still not really sure what led to all this happening. So this wild stuff. You got Russia firing stuff at the capital Kyiv right now. You got, shots going off next to the White House and also some stuff going on in the RAN too. It's hard to believe, but yeah, a lot of stuff.
And it appears that according to some transcripts that we were able to get out of the police scanner that just came out quite literally just a little while ago, we were able to hear some of the following statements made on the scanner. Medic 2 responded along with the Battalion Chief 6 for a shooting at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. Medic 2 responded along with Battalion Chief 6 for a shooting at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, operating on a TAC channel 0 Bravo 3 at 1810. Then another statement came through the scanner a minute prior stating Battalion Chief EMS and Battalion Chief 6 respond along with EMS, Engine 23, EMS 7 for a shooting at 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. And it appears that most of the scanner messages are generally a repeat of some sort of a possible shooting that occurred on 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. If we actually look for 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, we can actually get the understanding that this quite literally happened at the intersection of 17th Street Northwest, which is right here, in Pennsylvania Avenue, which appears to be somewhere over here. So it appears that this happened quite literally right outside of the White House grounds, most likely on the side of the Eisenhower Executive Office building, from what we're able to piece together quickly here on air at the moment. So this shooting was incredibly close, and from what we understand, it sounded as though, and unfortunately, folks, we can't show any of the footage, but it sounded as though a absolute firefight, almost like an infantry battle, occurred just right outside of the White House grounds, which then led to the White House being closed, really shut down and being put on a lockdown. Some people have been saying in the chat that Washington, D.C. is the safest city in America, but I've got to be entirely honest with y'all, we haven't been covering this a lot, but a shooting like this, basically a block or two from the White House, is happening almost weekly at this point, so I would highly doubt that Washington, D.C. is an incredibly safe place at the moment, considering that the surrounding perimeter around Washington, D.C., or more so the White House, is generally becoming the equivalent of the Battle of Mariupol or the Battle of Pokrovsk that's going on in Ukraine right now. So I generally doubt that, but this appears to be one of the more significant sorts of shootings that we've heard of so far around the area of the perimeter of the White House, and we'll be waiting to see what exactly comes out of this as a development. We haven't been able to hear, at least on our end, of anyone being apprehended yet, but there is a significant law enforcement presence that has locked down the White House, and I believe just a few minutes ago, about 2 or 3 minutes ago while we've been talking about this, the lockdown has just been lifted, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it appears to have been lifted so far. So that's pretty much all we know from the White House situation. So that one we'll have to leave on the back burner for right now. But going back to the story about the Ukraine situation with the Oreshniks, apparently from what we can tell so far, I was waiting to see if we could get some more information on it. It sounds like just one Oreshnik IRBM was fired at Kyiv. It sounds like it was just one of them. But of course, you see multiple different warheads coming in because it's a MIRV. It has multiple different reentry vehicles. So that's why it appears like it's multiple. But I think it was only one missile fired. So if you see damage footage coming out, which we haven't gotten just yet, that's probably going to be showing not the Oreshnik damage. It's probably going to be more showing the damage from the Kinzels and also the other more traditional munitions that Russia uses during these attacks. We did see a moment ago that apparently multiple different Tu-95 Russian bombers were in the sky. So they are lurking around right now around the area. So we're expecting more attacks and more information to be coming out about that here pretty shortly. But it does appear that Russia's trying to get vengeance for all the attacks that Ukraine's been conducting on Moscow. It looks like they're going pretty hard. Now, one thing I also want to note as well is Ukraine had stated that the Russians were going to go for government sites, meaning they were going to try to strike centers of decision-making in the capital of Kyiv. Right now, we simply don't know exactly where these missiles have impacted. It could be that the Russians targeted that, but right now we simply just don't know. But Enforcer, what's your take?
It does appear that at the moment the strikes are most likely not directly attacking government centers, at least from the information that we have at the moment, as we haven't been able to hear any initial reports of any of the central government buildings in the city of Kyiv being hit or heavily damaged as a result of the ongoing attacks that we're watching right now. We do understand that there has been a lot of explosions in the city of Kyiv, but it doesn't appear that any of those have been within the very central area of the city where most of the governmental buildings are at this moment. So it appears to just be a broader attack against the city of Kyiv as we're able to confirm it right now. But once again, folks, we're covering the story as it is happening live, meaning that at any moment we might get updates stating to the contrary of what we're reporting on the air right now. We can confirm that the Oreshnik IRBMs did not impact the city of Kyiv, but impacted the city of Bila Tserkva within the area of the Kyiv Oblast, meaning that this is within the Kyiv region, but not within the city of Kyiv itself. There is a larger operational airbase within this area, as many of y'all can see right here. It does appear to be largely a graveyard, but there is a possibility, given the current war in Ukraine, that some Ukrainian Air Force units may have been rotating in or out of this airfield during the time of the attack, but once again, we would not be able to confirm that at the moment right now. All we can confirm is that the Oreshnik IRBM's MIRVs did impact the Bila Tserkva area.
There is more impacts in Lebanon from Israel. Massive strikes that's been going on today in the Middle East. Massive strikes. We got the Russian missile being launched from Russia. Also, we have the shooting in DC, which is crazy. I don't understand why people are going to sit there and try to shoot weapons in DC. Like, it doesn't make no sense at all. Like, seriously. Like, they still have National Guard there. Y'all know this, right? Like, you might not see them. They're undercover, man. They have undercover National Guards and stuff there.
And outside of that, we're still trying to piece together what exactly has been impacted or damaged and what kind of extent of damage is currently being seen in the city so far. Casualty reports have not come out yet either, as this attack is ongoing, and they haven't been able to get a head count on how many people have been wounded or killed at this moment either.
Yeah, and also, by the way, real quick, let's do an analysis of the missile, because I see a lot of people having questions about the Oreshnik. The Oreshnik is not new, by the way, like we've said before. It has been launched on Ukraine before. In fact, that was the first combat use of the missile, was on Ukraine by the Russian forces. So we know generally it's about a 3,000 and 5,000 kilometer range for the weapon. That's how far it can go. But there's also a minimum range on the weapon as well. So how close was Kyiv to the launch site of Kapustin Yar? Because right now it's believed that Kapustin Yar was the launch site for the missile. How far is that? Just so we can get an idea of how much close it was to the minimum range of the missile itself.
It was at a range of about 716 miles. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the Oreshnik IRBM and most IRBMs have a minimum firing arc of over 300 miles or so. So this was well within the range of the IRBM. Not at its longest range, but somewhere around the middle range of what it's capable of.
Yeah, and also, it's really stupid, folks. Like, it's really dumb. This is mainly, and also, by the way, I mean, it appears to have been largely kinetic, meaning it did not have an active warhead on it. It was simply, the actual MIRV itself was simply smashing into the ground, and it created a kinetic impact, which causes damage, by the way, but it's not the same as arming it with, like, explosives. It's not the same thing. So this appears to have been kinetic, no warhead included, no explosive. So it's kind of stupid to use an Oreshnik, because Russia is not exactly what you'd call a rich country right now. they're going broke, and their pockets are a little bit on the empty side, the light side, I guess you could say. And the Oreshnik is believed to cost between $30 million and $100 million per launch for a single Oreshnik IRBM missile. So that's a very expensive munition to launch just to, I guess, make a statement, I guess, because we don't even know what it hit yet. Like, it appears to have hit somewhere off to the side of Kyiv, maybe, but we can't really tell. So really a dumb thing to do. But of course, this is the way Russia terrorizes Ukraine, by doing stuff like this. Thankfully, it does not appear to have hit in the middle of Kyiv. Like, for example, it didn't hit the Verkhovna Rada or anything like that, thankfully. But we don't know what the other damage is, because of course Kinzels were launched, normal missiles were launched as well, and possibly drones also. I just got a report from somebody that lives in Kyiv that's
We have, just want to let y'all know that the call lines are open, y'all. The call lines are open 540-251-7687. So if y'all want to call in, ask questions about the show, feel free.
said they're hearing drones flying around. So it's definitely not over yet.
One thing that's also interesting as well is that according to intelligence leaks that have come out of the Russian Federation, Russia's capabilities to produce Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missiles is very meager at its best estimates. Annually, it's expected that at the best-case scenario, Russia is only producing 5 Oreshniks annually, and at a more normal pace, they would be producing about 3 of them, meaning that the single launch of this one Oreshnik has expended 33% of their Oreshnik IRBM production over the course of this year, meaning that the only one, if this Oreshnik is a brand new variant of the Oreshnik, the only one that they have successfully built this year was just launched to the Ukrainians, and right now they're about a third of the way to halfway to working on finishing the second Oreshnik for this year in terms of production figures, meaning that not only is this costly on the costly side prohibitive, but also it is strategically asinine, as this is expending significant amounts of munitions relative to their production rate annually and the amount that we believe are in storage, to be able to only do what can be described as some chest puffing and saber rattling with a nuclear weapon that isn't even armed with the nuclear warheads when it's impacting Ukraine. And they've done this 3 times over the past 2 years for the larger part. It doesn't really appear that it's been doing much to really cramp down on Ukraine's resolve. Ukraine has been fairly resilient even through the past 2 attacks, and we believe that this one will most likely not be changing the resolve either. We've seen that since the first attack in 2024, the Ukrainians have been able to completely stabilize the line, achieve superiority of firepower against the Russian Federation on the battlefield due to drone superiority, and have also been able to conduct successful counteroffensives at the city of Kupiansk, Novopavlivka, Pokrovsk, and other fronts, causing significant losses and the loss of territory for the Russian Federation's armed forces over the past 2 years, which is not painting a positive picture for the Russian army whatsoever, and it doesn't appear that these Oreshnik launches and impacts in Ukraine have had any impact on Ukrainian strategic planning or their economic and military position throughout the point of the conflicts since these 3 Oreshnik impacts over the past 2 years. Right now,
But you would say, though, that this attack right here that we're seeing is likely direct revenge for the attacks on Moscow. Is that's the way I'm interpreting it. It seems like the Russians, and especially Putin himself, he wanted to make a statement to try to terrorize the Ukrainians, because as we've been covering over the last week, the attacks on Moscow by Ukrainian drones and missiles have been ramped up to a level that's even hard to believe, even for us, and we've been covering the war for 4+ years. They've been launching literally daily attacks on Moscow. They've been striking the perimeter.
So this is from the United States Secret Service. Shortly after 6 p.m. Saturday, an individual in the area of 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue pulled a weapon from his bag and began firing. Secret Service police returned fire, striking the suspect, who was transported to an area hospital where he was pronounced deceased. During the shooting, one bystander was also struck by gunfire. No injuries were sustained by officers. The president was in the White House during the incident. However, no protectees or operations were impacted. So this is from the United States Secret Service. We have right here that I'm about to pull up on screen for y'all. One second. and I will get that up on the screen for y'all. So, as y'all can see, that we have confirmation that there was a shooter and he was pronounced dead at the hospital after sustaining gunshot wounds from Secret Service agents. Now, this don't even make any sense, man. Why are people trying to like vote, man? Like vote. Like that's how you that's how you stop all this is you vote. Like not with violence. Not with violence, y'all. We have breaking news coming in now with another strike that's going on in Lebanon from Israel also. So it is it's crazy to think that, I mean, not just think, this is where the world has actually come to. And what we become. I mean, we're not animals, y'all. We can see that the video on the one is messing up right now. It is back now. That one is out, so I'm not for sure if the camera got hit or what actually happened. So we will keep you up posted with this about what's going on with that.
Perimeter of it. They've been literally striking through hundreds of air defense systems and still hitting very critical targets, including the refineries, depots, and also, logistics trucks near Moscow as well. So it seems to me like Putin is getting desperate because this seems like a desperate move. This doesn't seem like something that a country winning would like to do, which is launch a $50 million missile just for the hell of it, just to make a point. So is that the way you're interpreting it?
I would agree. I would think that that's probably what has happened today and why they conducted this attack, because there really isn't any other reason that we've seen so far for them to do this. The last time they launched an Oreshnik, it was in response and revenge for Operation Spiderweb, which destroyed a third of all of Russia's strategic bomber forces within the Russian Federation. And that Oreshnik was launched in response to that. The first Oreshnik back in 2024, I forgot what was happening relative to that time period to make them launch the first Oreshnik. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was something pertaining to continued U.S. support or growing support in the European Union for Ukraine to join them, and I believe that was what led to the first one being launched, just as a sign that they could do it and they'd be willing to do it in the future. But I would also agree that this one is most likely due to the Moscow attacks. The Russians really have no conventional way to respond at this point, because much to the dismay of some who, for some reason, continue to simp for the Russian military and the Russian Federation, Russia has been going all out in the conflict for 4 years now to be where they're at right now, with about 1.4 million Russian soldiers wounded and killed, and almost absolutely nothing to show in frontline changes since the latter end of 2022. If anything, they've been losing ground year over year for the most part since about 2024 to 2025 at this point. So generally, the Russians don't have much of a way to be able to respond to things like a conventional Ukrainian attack on Moscow without working towards trying to use or feint the use of some sort of an IRBM.
We are pulling something up for y'all for we have video, y'all. Huh. Yeah. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. So we're not going to do it that way then. I apologize, y'all. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty, as you should say. We'll just do it this way. Oh. Well. I don't know why it's doing that for. It's okay.
IRBM like the Oreshnik that we just saw used today. So I would say that this is really a sign of desperation and also showing that Russia is at their absolute limit of what they're conventionally capable of, since they have to keep trying to employ this as a form of a threat against Ukraine and also the Western world.
Yeah, I would say so. The only question, I'm about to put this up in a poll right now. The question I have is this going to start affecting Ukraine's willingness to launch attacks on Moscow? Because it does appear like Zelensky's plan to basically bring the war home to the Muscovites, which are the people that live inside of Moscow. It seems like it was actually having an effect. The people in Moscow were starting to get very vocal about the war not going well, and also the fact that Putin came to protect the capital city. So I wonder if this is going to affect how Ukraine launches their attacks. Are they going to reel them back in the fear that maybe more IRBMs might be fired at their capital city? I just wonder what that effect's going to look like.
I would have to say I don't really know, and so far off of the past two examples, we've seen that Ukrainian resolve has not really changed at all, regardless of the use of Oreshniks. And so I would go off of this one assuming the same, since we already have two examples from the last two attacks of the Russians conducting this sort of a threat, and then Ukraine largely shrugging it off and then even ramping up their attacks against Russia. I have a feeling that we're probably going to be seeing that nothing changes, or if anything changes, Ukraine will probably start to hit the Russians even harder, because that seems to be the ongoing trend since the last.
So we have footage of the Erectionist missile. Different footage than what's been on the program so far. We're going to bring it over to the screen now. One sec. Gotta change something real quick.
Ще балістика, мабуть. Ще балістика, мабуть.
Now y'all see there where they actually was hitting Kyiv. Now I'm not for sure if that was the erection missile or if that was just drones or regular cruise missiles, but they are launching a massive attack on Kyiv right now. Prayers out to everybody that's in Kyiv. Definitely don't want to see this because it's just getting too crazy now. I mean, they're literally talking about using nuclear weapons and stuff. So like, we just need to get it together and literally get some kind of peace deal worked out between Russia and Ukraine, because this is not going to stop until either they get a peace deal or nukes is going to end up being dropped. Russia's not going to keep on keep on fighting with Ukraine, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So not, I mean, if you look now on the map, they literally was almost in Kyiv, which is all the way here. I don't know if you can see that on the map or not. But anyways, they was almost into Kyiv, and they've already got pushed back this far. So yeah, it's only going to get more intense from here and more crazy.
Last two attacks and how Ukraine then responded and started to work off of them. Because, I mean, even right now, since the last Oreshnik attack in the winter of 2025, We've seen the Ukrainians have now started to go out of their way to directly attack and destroy Russian oil ports to completely stop them from even having an attempted export of their oil outside of their territory, which is a scale of attacks that we've never seen so far, and they generally, from what we know, are the most economically damaging yet as far as Ukrainian attack campaigns have gone. And that has only happened after the last Oreshnik strike, so I would have to believe that right now this is probably going to have no impact, and Ukraine is probably going to still continue on with conventional ramping up the war to its absolute fever pitch, which we haven't even reached yet as far as Ukraine's drone and long-range strike capabilities are concerned.
Yeah, probably so. Also, by the way, I am scanning for more breaking news right now to try to get a gist of what's happening right this very minute. There is no new footage coming out of the Oreshnik strike, well, although we've literally gotten pretty much every angle of that strike so far that we've shown pretty much on the air. So I think that's, well, actually, I say that, but let's see here. I think I might have one more angle here. I'm not sure if we've shown this one before, but I think this is actually a new angle that I just got. So I'll just repost that right now. Let's take a look at this clip and see if this is a different angle. It appears to be. I saw all the ones earlier, and I don't recognize this one.
This is fresh. Like, I saw it, I was like, this is fresh. We haven't seen this one. So here's the clip.
Ебать. Это орешник? Нет. Так я наебал тебя.
Are they supposed to come in sideways like that? How come some are aiming at the ground, at the target, and then some are like sideways and crooked flying down?
I don't really know how to explain that, actually. That's a good question. Generally, all I know is that the actual vehicle that's carrying, well, the MIRV carrier is carrying the independent reentry vehicles, and at some point, you usually see some sort of a bright flash because it's actually an explosive that separates the independent reentry vehicles from the carrier plate that they're all on, and then those independent reentry vehicles start flying in a cluster towards the ground. So I would say that it's probably just the orientation of the MIRV carrier when it detonated its explosives to jettison the warheads. I would have a feeling that that's probably the reason why we're seeing them at different orientations and angles. But once again, folks, I'm not an IRBM or a rocket scientist or anything. I think this is a little bit beyond my understanding, but that's probably the best explanation I could give with my layman's understanding of how MIRVs generally work.
Yeah, honestly, just the wild thing. It just seems janky. Like I see a lot of people in the chat saying it seems like these missiles never really have like a proper trajectory to them or something. I will say I'm not a MIRV expert either. I just know the basic topical information about it. But this something about this doesn't look right. Like something does not look normal about that. Like it seems like they should all be in a line. But I mean, they're going every which direction. Like the piece at the top was literally sideways coming down, and the other ones were straight at the target. So I don't know if this thing's working properly or not. I mean, the thing's had a lot of malfunctions. I mean, we've heard of Oreshniks blowing up on the launch pad. We've heard of them failing where they don't even ignite. I mean, there's been failures. And also, to make it even worse, the production timeline for the Oreshnik had to get pushed back for ages because they couldn't quite iron out the kinks with it. So it's very possible that maybe it's just janky and it doesn't work that good.
That could definitely be the case. I also see that some folks in the chat are saying they seem to be going so slow they can't be an Oreshnik. That's just a matter of perspective. If you look up right now at the moon doesn't look like it's moving at all, but the moon is moving at a speed of several 100,000 miles an hour. So it's really relative to the perspective of the viewer. You can also look up some nights and see the International Space Station going overhead, and it looks like it's going at a snail's pace. Like if it was a car, it would be going at about 30 miles an hour, when in reality it's going, I believe, 100,000 miles an hour as well in orbit, or an exceedingly high rate of speed. It's due to the fact that these people are filming this from Kyiv, and they're watching them from the very entry into the upper altitude to their impact on target, that this looks slow. But if you were to ever ask anyone to get a flying aircraft to go from the very outer edge of the atmosphere to hitting Bila Tserkva in less than a couple of seconds, you would be at an extremely high rate of speed. You would be well over Mach 10, probably towards Mach 20, with what we're watching right here, which is well within the hypersonic range. It's just that we haven't seen any footage from very close up at a fixed angle to show the true rate of speed of these MIRVs as they're impacting their targets. But also, by the way, folks, I don't have the exact speed of the ISS on hand. I'm just trying to use that as an example. But we do have breaking news coming out at this moment right now. So what do we got?
Okay, so let's jump back to the situation around the White House right now. We've gotten an explanation for what likely took place. They're saying that a man was shot by U.S. Secret Service after opening fire near the White House. Also, a bystander was also shot as well. So this could be a possible terror attack from the looks of it. It looks like someone jumped around to the perimeter of the White House and started opening fire, which seems to corroborate what people were hearing in.
Now, also, there was also a plot against Avivia Trump, Donald J. Trump's daughter, from Iran. So, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, what bringing the dude's kids and stuff into it, like that's insane. Like gloves is off once you mess with somebody's kids. Think about it. It's going to be crazy.
The background of these news broadcasts from the South Lawn. So this seems quite bad, actually. It seems like they were able to slip past some of the security nearby to the White House perimeter, and they started firing for the most part. So the details are still sparse, but now we're getting the idea that maybe it was not an altercation. Because also, I want to bring this up as well. We just heard of another shooting, I think last week near the White House, right down the road, and we never got a full explanation for what was happening with that. I think they said someone just started shooting, and that was the end of it. And a lot of people, I think including myself, chalked it up to maybe it was like a road rage incident, or somebody was fighting, or they got into a brawl and they started shooting at each other. But this appears to be a little bit different, possibly. So quite disturbing to see that. A lot of chaos going on right now.
Certainly a lot of chaos. I mean, I think at this point, Matthew, I think we've heard of a major shooting around the White House once every week for the past 3 weeks at this point. I remember 2 of them quite vividly. That there was one shooting that happened, I think, right up on Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest somewhere, and they had to shut this down. And then there was another shooting, I think, that happened on Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest heading towards the Capitol somewhere, and they had to shut the whole area down for that as well. And these 2 incidents, I believe, have just happened over the past few weeks leading up to this one. So I don't know what's going on around Washington, D.C. There's either something in the air or something in the water, but it's turning into a battlefield up there around the White House right now. I feel like at this point, they're just going to keep the place on a permanent state of lockdown, and they're going to have to Mad Max out the beast to try and get the president in and out of the building every day, because they're going to be going out into the wastelands, basically, at this point to be able to leave. But pretty wild incident nonetheless.
And also, it appears we got some more details as well. According to Insider Paper on Twitter, they're saying the suspect approached checkpoint near the White House and fired at officers, according to a U.S. law enforcement official. And take this with a grain of salt, by the way. I've not seen other verification of that, but that's coming from Insider Paper on Twitter. They say that the suspect in the shooting is down and taken to the hospital, and the scene is contained and no law enforcement personnel injured, according to the official. So if we believe that story right there, that's even worse. It sounds like they might have tried to breach the perimeter of the place. So I'm not. They keep expanding the White House perimeter. By the way, they keep expanding and they keep putting fences further back on the streets near the White House. I remember like I think it was like 8 or 9, 10 years ago when we went to D.C. and saw the White House. They were already extending the fences back even further beyond the White House. So I'm not sure how far back they are now. But this guy apparently approached a checkpoint from the sounds of it, and then started getting fired at.
Man, honestly, it's just wild. I don't really think they can expand the fences any farther either, because everything else around is private property. So unless they're willing to eminent domain and start demolishing whole blocks of buildings in Washington, I don't really think they can do more on the security side. It just seems at this point that there's a lot of incidents happening. To be honest, folks, this kind of reminds me of the time back in the early 2010s. There was this moment of mania that happened around the White House where people were slamming through the gates of the White House where they're
So the name of the shooter just came out. The name of the shooter is a 21-year-old male. The name of Nasira Beast. Or excuse me, Nasira Best. If I butchered the first name, I apologize. But that is the 21-year-old male got shot and killed today by the Secret Service agents.
Minivan with a baby in the back and just flooring it up to the building. And then there was that one guy who I don't know if this was the early 2010s or the mid 2010s, but there was another guy who jumped the fence, ran up the driveway with a giant kitchen knife in his hand, and then ran through the front door and then down into the kitchen. He was running around down there, and they're having to literally try and like grab the guy and throw him to the ground and stuff. There was a whole bunch of crazy incidents like that happened back then. It seems like we might be entering another era of nuts just trying to make it into the White House, because this kind of thing happens from time to time these days. Certainly not the first time we've ever heard of it.
It's really sketchy, really, because we just got the news yesterday. We really didn't cover it last night on the stream because we didn't have a whole bunch of detail about it. But there was a report that came out that apparently there was a assassination plot. Excuse me, there was an assassination plot allegedly against one of the kids of the president, apparently, and they just uncovered that the other day. And then they somehow foiled it, they stopped it, and they prevented it from happening, thankfully. So there's a lot of threats going around. I mean, also, by the way, we'll get to this in just a little while. There's also some new happenings with Iran, that apparently a deal is close. At least they claim a deal is close, and it sounds like it could be a done deal, but there's still some loose ends that need to be tied up with that. And also, a lot of people are not very happy with that. I'm seeing a lot of lawmakers coming out, and they are not happy that the U.S. might have possibly conceded to the Iranian terrorist regime. So there's no telling. I mean, it could be an Iranian sympathizer that's doing this type of stuff. They could be activating their sleeper groups possibly, but it's certainly a dangerous time in America right now.
Yeah, it is a pretty dangerous time, but then again, there's been a whole bunch of actions against the White House. I mean, it kind of comes in ebbs and flows, to be honest, folks, and some years are better than others. But I mean, there's been an endless amount of these. I remember back in the day listening to attacks that were conducted on the White House during Reagan's time. Some guy had an M60 machine gun and actually fired at the walls of the White House from Lafayette Square, and the entire side of the White House was just pop-marked with 7.62 rounds from this guy with this M60. And there's been loads of incidents like this over the years, because crazy people love to try and attack people in the government. It's just a fact of life. So this is a wild one, though. And I mean, they're starting to happen pretty frequently these days. I mean, it's basically once a week. So, kind of getting into the crazy hour at this point around the White House. But we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment right now. So what do we got?
Okay, so we're getting some footage of the other attacks with the Iskander-M ballistic missiles on Kyiv. This is a horrific attack, folks. This is a very bad attack on Kyiv right now. And let's take a look at this. This is apparently a couple of the Russian Iskander missiles coming in and hitting the capital.
Dang.
You can hear the air raid sirens going off a little bit.
That's crazy right there. Those are some pretty significant hits. It looks like Kyiv's air defenses might be getting overwhelmed just by the sheer volume of incoming missiles and drones, and we're starting to hear of a lot of impacts in the city of Kyiv, which is very unfortunate to hear. But luckily, we haven't been able to hear of the Russians firing an individual Oreshnik at Kyiv, just at Bila Tserkva. But that does not mean that Kyiv is not getting hit heavily at this point and taking a significant amount of damage from the ongoing Russian attack at this moment right now.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, by the way, that Zelensky literally agreed with Putin just on May the 9th, which was about a week or two ago. He agreed not to launch a Ukrainian drone attack on the May 9th Victory Day parade. He didn't have to do that, by the way. I mean, they agreed to it, and Putin didn't follow through on any of his part of the deal at all. But Zelensky decided not to hit the parade and let it go. But now we're seeing that now it appears like Putin wants to get revenge on Ukraine once again unfairly. Not that war is fair, but he's wanting to do this humongous attack that we're seeing tonight, even after Ukraine forewent their attack on the May 9th Victory Day parade. So this just shows you where Putin's mindset is at. He definitely plays in the gutter, definitely. And that's nothing new to people that's been following this war. Putin's definitely a big liar. So, I would expect, because I think knowing the Ukrainians after 4+ years, this is probably not going to make the Ukrainians cower in a corner. This is probably going to make them go even harder than ever, I would imagine. And they're probably going to ramp the stuff up. So we could be in for a long series of escalations after tonight.
We could see that the Ukrainians launch what we theorize could be the doomsday attack on Moscow, because we do know that Ukraine has a large amount of long-range attack drones in storage. Based off of what we have heard publicly is their production figures from external sources outside of Ukraine and in Ukraine. They could conduct an attack of 1,000 or several thousand drones on a single day on the city of Moscow, and that would quite truly overwhelm the Russian air defenses around that city so badly most of those drones, most likely 60 to 70% of them, would well and truly be able to make it through the air defenses and hit really whatever they want, almost hit everything in Moscow that would be of any note or value, meaning that the Ukrainians do have not a nuclear option, but a conventional option to be able to respond to this that could be so overwhelming that it may force the Russians, once again in turn, to respond in a more violent and escalatory manner than they're even doing right now today. But still, absolutely crazy attacks, and once again showing us that at the moment right now, the armed forces of Ukraine are trying their best to defend the city of Kyiv, but it does appear that the Russians are throwing quite literally everything they have at the city. We actually have new footage coming out at this moment as well of the Kyiv attacks, and we'll be showing y'all some of that footage right here. We can actually hear an incoming Iran too. And
it hit the crane.
Oh my God.
Oh my
damn.
God, that's awful. Man, what is it? Is that a residential apartment building?
It looked like it. It looked like the drone was trying to fly past, because we can see that apparently its wing clipped the crane, which completely stopped its airspeed and also probably ripped off one of its wings, which then led the body of the drone into a stall. And we can actually, you can see the body of the drone right there. It's actually, I guess, that piece, not the burning one that we're seeing. And then it hits down in the middle and then explodes.
Jeez. Well, thankfully, it looks like it was under construction because the crane there is all over the site. Whatever it hit down below, I hope, and it appears to be, it was probably unoccupied because it was in the middle of the night, obviously, and they're not working in construction in the middle of the night. So thankfully, I think the crane might actually save somebody from getting hit by that thing.
Yeah, I think so. I honestly, it's kind of lucky that that crane was there. I guess the drone operator didn't see it on the camera and just ran headlong into it, ripping apart the drone and then leading to the crash we just saw on film. But a wild clip, to say the least. Also, folks, in the meantime, before we get into any of the other additional news that we've gotten out of Ukraine at the moment, we have also been able to hear of some major news coming out of the Middle East at this time, pertaining to the U.S.'s ongoing negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And it appears that we have some very negative news to report on this situation right now. We were able to hear that just a little while ago, the President of the United States stated the following. I'm in the Oval Office at the White House, where we had a very good call with President Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of the United Arab Emirates, Emir Tamim bin Hamad bin Khalif Al Thani, the Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim bin Jaber Al Thani, and Minister Minister Ali Al Tawadi of Qatar, Field Marshals, we're going to skip the names, and all of these things related to the Memorandum of Understanding pertaining to peace. An agreement has been largely negotiated, subject to finalization between the United States of America, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the various other countries as listed. Separately, I had a call with the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, which likewise went very well. Final aspects and details of the deal are currently being discussed and will be announced shortly. In addition to many other elements of the agreement, the Strait of Hormuz will be opened. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Right afterwards, the Iranians then came out and stated that the Strait of Hormuz is sure as hell not going to be opened, as the Iranian Fars News has denied the president's claim that the Strait of Hormuz will return to its pre-war status, saying any possible deal would leave Iran in control of passage routes, timing, and permits, and while only allowing traffic to return to previous levels, generally making it clear that right now the Iranian media is making it incredibly clear that they are not going to be reopening the Strait of Hormuz at any point in the future, and this is starting to throw the entire statements of the president into question, because generally a lot of statements have been made that have always sounded very promising coming out of the White House for the past month and a half, and we've never seen any of those turn true.
Also, by the way, folks, just to make this clear, this is what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding is what this is called. This is not a concrete agreement, what they're referring to right now. They're referring to an MOU, which basically means we agree to talk in the future, which is about as weak as an agreement can possibly get. Ask Ukraine about memorandums. I'll tell you all about that. It's very, 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 very weak. So I hope that this turns out not to be true right here, because it's starting starting to sound like the U.S. is thinking strongly about conceding to Iran, which would be the most horrific move that we could possibly make ever in this situation. So I'm just not sure. It's contingent on Iran agreeing, and it's contingent on the U.S. finalizing it as well, which is still a long way to go. That's not as short of a gap as people think, because the Iranians, like you're going over, are still saying that they're not giving up control of the strait, they're not giving up nukes, and I don't see them giving those up in the near future whatsoever.
They are not giving up a single thing from what we know. Also, additionally, we have now heard from the U.S. side that apparently there, after this memorandum is going to be signed, once again, to make this clear, and let me wait to try and pause this. Okay, well, apparently it's not even going to play. But after signing the memorandum, which is largely non-binding, Iran and the United States will have 30 days to reach a full nuclear agreement. If one is not reached, then nothing happens from what we're understanding right now. So we have 30 days to reach a nuclear deal with Iran. So the timer's on us. And then if the Iranians just somehow persist, I suppose, through those 30 days, there is no way to further press them to make any sort of a deal at that point, according to what we're hearing right now. So this appears, at least from what we're hearing at the moment right now, to be near complete defeat, at least on the end of the United States, because if the Iranians are saying that the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain under their control, yet the war is going to end, and they're also not going to be giving up their nuclear weapons, and they have 30 days to waffle their way through to make sure that they can just end up dropping that whole thing dead and then just moving on, and that means the United States did not achieve a single one of its original war goals against the Islamic Republic of Iran of, here's the following: overthrowing the Islamic regime, cutting the Iranian military down to size, destroying them economically, or anything else for that matter. And now, not only that, not only do we not achieve any of those war goals, we're now going to be apparently just kind of ignoring the fact that Iran will have control over the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely at this point if we walk away, which there's really no other way to describe this other than a defeat at that point, because we're giving over control of a major strategic waterway to a mortal enemy of the United States of America within the Middle East, which is going to make them a major power broker within the region, because all Gulf states are going to have to soften up their diplomatic tone and diplomatic position with the Iranians to ensure that their ships can get through. That also means that that's giving the Chinese a backdoor into growing relations with these Arabian countries and undermining the U.S. sphere of influence that exists within the Middle East. If this is actually followed through on and pressed through with, which I do have to make it clear, folks, that there is a possibility that everything that the president said isn't even true at all, and he just like woke up from a dream and that's what he thought it was. There is a slight possibility of that. If this is actually followed through on, this is going to be going abysmally for the United States in long-term strategic impacts well on into the future.
But isn't it also, just on the other side of things here, is this also kind of not what we saw right before the attack started on February the 28th, earlier this year? Because when the attack started on Iran back in February, late February, we generally saw a whole bunch of statements come out saying, oh, well, you know, it looks like we're finalizing a deal with Iran. And then the next thing you know, on February the 28th, all of a sudden we had, the war broke out, literally a whole war between Iran and the United States after the U.S. Started with a massive salvo along with Israel by striking the top Iranian leadership. So I wonder if this is a similar lead up to a situation like that, because clearly the Iranians have not changed anything. I would say pretty much everybody can see that for the most part. I mean, the Iranians literally had their media come out and say they're not giving up the two main things that the U.S. wants, which is Hormuz and the nukes. They're not giving up either one of those. So could it be a possible feint leading up to an attack, possibly, that could be a quick blitz coming up very soon?
It's a possibility, but it really wouldn't have much of an impact to get this far to then do that, because then there's also the fact that no one will believe us when we go into negotiations with them again in the future, which could have a very negative impact on other situations, like, for example, the war in Ukraine or what's going on in East Asia right now, because China could say, for example, well, you know, the U.S. looks like they were about to finalize a deal with Iran, and then they blew them up at the 13th hour of signing the deal. What if the U.S. does that to us, and then they blow us up at the 13th hour of making a deal on selling out Taiwan? And then they could start losing us a lot of diplomatic leverage in negotiations with other countries, because now they're not going to trust us to their word when it comes to those sorts of comments or any sort of deals that we can make. So generally, I would doubt that, unless if that is the plan, and now we're not going to be trusted by anybody on the global stage that might be an adversary or might be in the middle ground, or even our allies for that matter, because everyone might just start to understand that the U.S. will say one thing and then then do another as simultaneously, which would lead no one to trust us. So I would doubt it. I think at this point, they're seriously looking towards making this sort of an agreement or a deal, which clearly, I mean, there's no room for argument here, is going to be at the detriment of the United States of America and our foreign policy position in the Middle East for decades if this sort of an agreement is made with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I know some people are going to say, well, where are their boats? It doesn't matter where the big boats are. Like, they can be at the bottom of the sea every day of the week. If they control the Hormuz, that's it. That's like saying, well, you know, I took this guy's Glock, but he still controls the entire city. You know, it's like, well, what's really the point of bragging about, you know, we stole the dude's Glock out of his Camaro if he's still running the gangs that run the whole city? Well, that doesn't really mean much of anything to us, does it? Because he's still got a whole gang behind him. He's got a lot of power to leverage throughout the entirety of the region. So it won't really matter all too much in the long run, no matter what we did to the Iranians conventionally, because now they have the one thing that they'll be able to hold over us indefinitely, which is controlling the strait and shutting it down whenever we make them unhappy, and then forcing us to really have to meet them in the middle at a minimum, or meet all of their demands for them to be happy enough to reopen it to normal traffic.
Well, you know, in the meantime, Iran, even though they're saying that they want peace and they're going to stop. Also, by the way, apparently a part of this deal that they're reaching, this memorandum of understanding that they're trying to reach here, apparently it includes stopping the wars on all fronts, which I would presume includes the proxy forces, because obviously Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and all these other groups, they're all basically extensions of the Iranian regime to a large degree, and they're funded by them too. So I would assume that means bringing them all to an end. But in the process, though, apparently the U.S. is considering releasing Iranian assets that are currently frozen overseas. Apparently that's something being discussed right now. That's being reported by some of the mainstream outlets. But once again, it's a draft agreement. We have not gotten the official agreement itself out. So there could be possibly some stuff getting lost in translation, possibly. That's a very big concept there with that. So we'll have to see. But in the meantime, though, Iran has been launching attacks on Iraq yet again, on our pro Kurdish locations in that area. The U.S.-backed Kurdish forces, they've been getting hit. In fact, their headquarters, I believe, was just hit about 2 hours ago by Iran.
That is true. In northern Iraq, currently, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is conducting rocket and missile attacks against Kurdish forces within the area, as we did get reports of rocket impacts in Tarmiya in the northern part of Baghdad. And we also were able to see that the Kurdish HQ in Irbm appears to have also been hit and is burning profusely after a major hit by an IRGC missile or a rocket that directly impacted the Kurdish headquarters. We can see the fire here in this clip, showing a large field of fire and clearly significant damage.
That's bad. That's obviously not good. I wonder what the U.S. forces, what are they doing when Iran launches these missiles? Because, I mean, the U.S. doesn't know who the hell the missiles are going for when they get launched. So I guess the U.S. just lets the missiles go to their location and just hit, and they assume it's not going to hit the U.S. forces, I guess.
Well, you know, that's kind of funny because that Kurdish headquarters is in the city of Irbm, and right up here on the northern side of Irbm is one of the largest army bases that we have in Iraq at the moment, which is this entire area right here near to the Irbm International Airport, which has been hit prior. When the Iranians fire these missiles, it is standard operational procedure that all of the personnel at these facilities have to go to ready shelters and basically sit in their little concrete bunkers and wait out the attack and hope that it wasn't coming for them. So in the midst of this attack right now, by the way, folks, just to keep this in mind, the embarrassment of this all, while the U.S. is appears to be at the moment signing away a deal that's going to give away control of the Hormuz to Iran, meaning that we're losing more than we started off the war with at this point. And not only that, the Iranians are going to get away probably with having a nuclear program. Our soldiers at this moment are having to hide in concrete bunkers in Irbm because they don't know if the incoming rockets and missiles are coming for them or the Kurds just a couple of miles away. But we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so apparently it looks like some of the Russian attack drones and possibly missiles are currently making their way close to the Polish border. The Polish have just announced, and this isn't completely uncommon, but it does indicate that the attack is starting to reach closer to NATO's borders that Russia's currently conducting on Ukraine. It sounds like the Polish have now dispatched their F-16s to patrol the border, and if we go take a look at Flight Radar 24 right now, I'm sure we'll probably see some NATO refueling aircraft in the area, I would imagine. So we can take a look at that here in just a second. But we'll have to watch and see. This is such a large attack. There's always a possibility that maybe a drone could go errant into Poland, possibly. We've seen that before. And also, there it is, MMF-19. That's the usual aircraft that usually goes over there for attack. So it looks like it made the journey from the Netherlands or Belgium, it looks like. Yeah, maybe Belgium. No, the Netherlands, actually. Yeah, it went from the Netherlands all the way over to Ukraine or near Ukraine to get ready to refuel those F-16s.
And it does appear that right now there is most likely a Baltic air policing operation, or generally an Eastern European air policing operation being conducted right now within the southeastern area of Poland, as we do understand that apparently some drones are getting close. And according to the direct statement by the Polish Air Force, they have stated, attention, due to the activity of the Russian Federation's long-range aviation, which is carrying out strikes using air attack weapons on the territory of Ukraine, military aviation is operating in our airspace. In accordance with the applicable procedures, the operational command of the armed forces has activated the necessary forces and means is at its disposal. Ground-based air defense systems and radar reconnaissance have reached readiness status. These actions are preventative in nature and are aimed at securing and protecting the airspace, particularly in areas adjacent to threatened regions. The operational command of the armed forces is monitoring the current situation, and the subordinate forces and means remain ready for immediate response. So at the moment, this is generally a broader statement just stating that the Polish Air Force has been mobilized along with Polish ground air defense forces, and they are waiting to see if anything at all is going to be crossing over the border. So at the moment, that seems to be what we have. And also, a lot of people are currently talking about the poll that we have ongoing in the chat right now. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so to address the poll that we've had running for a little while, the question says, will Ukraine continue launching more attacks on Moscow after this IRBM Oreshnik strike that Moscow literally just launched on the capital city of Kyiv? 72% said yes, Ukraine will continue their attacks on Moscow in the same way they've been doing, while 22% said Ukraine will actually end up increasing their attacks on Moscow soon in retaliation, and 3% said Ukraine will reduce the attacks. And I would say that I'm with the 22%. Ukraine is not the type of country to take a beating like this and go cower in the corner. They're not that type of country. So I think Ukraine's going to increase the attack soon. If Russia wants to escalate it to the extreme, they can, and they probably will. That's the way the Russians work as well. But here's the catch, though. Putin was already getting desperate. Before Ukraine started launching these attacks on Moscow on the daily basis about a week ago, we were seeing that the reports were already emerging that Putin was going to launch an attack like we saw today on the decision-making centers inside of Kyiv. We saw it happen today, so I would say that Putin was going to do this anyway, and Ukraine simply preempted it by attacking Moscow. So Putin's trajectory is already predetermined. His fate is already predetermined as well. So he knows it's not going well for him. The frontline situation is not going good. He can't protect his people in the capital. So I think Ukraine's going to ramp it up. They're going to take this thing to the extreme, and honestly, at this point, if Putin wants to tango, I mean, Ukraine's clearly willing to match him, so it's going to get there. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would be with the 72%. I think that the Ukrainians are certainly going to be continuing attacks against the Russian Federation and most likely ramping them up, because outside of these Oreshnik attacks, the Ukrainians have already been working at scaling their attacks for years, and we've seen that these Oreshnik attacks have had really no impact on their future planning or scaling down their attacks. The Ukrainians are in a national fight for their own survival against the Russian invasion, and for that reason, they are in the war to win it, not try and prolong it as long as they can. And so they will make sure to continue on their attacks, and if anything, they might add on to them a little bit extra to be able to cause further damage and also further terror within the Russian public, which might start to create a permeable situation with the economic calamities that are currently gripping the country as well, to see that a possible coup might be attempted against the Putin regime, or that Putin's position starts to become so unstable that they might consider entering or exiting the war to be able to try and focus on putting down the significant issues that they would be having on the home front at that point. So I would generally be with the 72%. Ukraine is going to continue the attacks, and I haven't seen them being phased by these attacks so far, and I don't think that they're ever really going to be phased by Oreshnik IRBM strikes on their territory at any point, regardless of what is on board those IRBMs.
True. And also, another thing as well, right now, Ukraine is batted 1 for 2. They had 2 intelligence reports out there warning of Russian escalations. One of them was what just happened. They were saying that Russia was going to launch an IRBM or missiles on decision-making centers inside of Kyiv. Right now, we don't know if any decision-making centers have had taken a direct impact, but it's fair to say that Russia might have been targeting those locations. So it looks like Putin followed through with that threat tonight. The second one that Ukraine's warning about is that they're saying that Belarus is going to either let the Russian forces attack Ukraine from the north on their territory in Belarus into Ukraine, or it could be the Belarusian military launches their own assault on Ukraine from the north. So at this point, Ukraine's bad 1 for 2. So I wonder if there's a second one there, since Putin is getting desperate. That would seem to be a very desperate move to drag Belarus into it, considering that Belarus wants nothing to do with the situation. I wonder if that's going to come true next.
I have a feeling that that might possibly, but it's always hard to say because, you know, like we never really know, because I think honestly, folks, outside of the embassy warning in Kyiv, this Oreshnik attack did kind of come out of the blue a little, outside of Ukraine's warnings that they believe that something big's going to be happening and a big strike's coming. Outside of those two statements, this did kind of come out of the blue and really only started to appear as a possible threat over the past few days, and then just came out of the blue in the midst of today, much to the surprise of many. So there is always a possibility they could pull something like that off, but we probably wouldn't know up until the last 72 hours leading up to it.
Yeah, probably so, maybe, possibly. Also, by the way, for everybody asking about this, it sounds like we've gotten a casualty report, at least a preliminary report. This one's coming from the Kyiv Independent, and they're saying that there's at least 3 injured in the Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv, which honestly, folks, that's lower than I thought. It's apparently only 3 injuries from the sounds of it, but that's early. It could change. It definitely could change. So they're saying 3 people injured during the entire attack so far. So I'm hoping it stays at that, because, of course, no deaths. That's the big thing. Apparently no death out of the situation. It'll be a miracle if there's no death coming out of this, because this is one of the largest attacks I've seen on Kyiv, and probably, I don't even know if I can say a year. This is one of the largest I've ever seen on Kyiv, and Russia is doing this, and I would imagine they're probably hitting civilian infrastructure. So if there's only 3 injuries out of the whole thing, then we're in good shape.
We've also been able to additionally hear that apparently the suspect involved in the shooting near to the White House has apparently died in the hospital after sustaining fatal gunshot wounds from the Secret Service's return fire. So that was information that just came out a few moments ago from Fox News as well, in the midst of the reports that we're getting right now out of Kyiv that seem to be somewhat positive. But I do have to remind everyone here that there may be rubble in the city at this moment from some of the hits. And right now, first responders are going to be digging through that rubble to try and find the wounded and the dead that are most likely still inside, buried under the concrete and rebar from those explosions and the collapsing of those buildings. So this number might rise, and I have a feeling that it definitely will be rising, but at least right now, the preliminary report is 3 wounded in the attack on Kyiv. But we actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment. So what do we got, Matthew?
So, believe it or not, we just got footage apparently showing the moment of the launch of the Russian Oreshnik IRBM missile from Kapustin Yar. So it does appear it came from Kapustin Yar. That was an accurate assessment earlier that we made. So let's take a look. Apparently, this is it taking off.
And we can see it here. Got the audio up on this, but we can see the missile making its way out of the Kapustin Yar test range and on towards Ukraine. We see that it's now gone exo-atmospheric.
It does appear to just be one. Like, that's why I was saying earlier, it appeared to have been one Oreshnik that was fired and just multiple warheads that hit, because it's a MIRV system. So it does appear to be that was the case. I saw a couple of people saying it was like 10 Oreshniks. I don't think it was 10. I think it was just one.
Yeah, they definitely don't even have that many to use against the state of Ukraine. That would be highly unlikely, especially against a single city, because they basically be wasting every single new Oreshnik that they have made over the past few years that they fired off 10 of them. So it does appear to be one, and it does appear that this is once again being confirmed at this point as being launched from the Kapustin Yar test range, which generally we reported it as factual news at the beginning, but to be honest with y'all folks, I just reported it as factual news because we had enough patterns so far to to be able to recognize that clearly it would be launched from here. The last two were launched from here. So the third one, highly likely was launched from here. Turns out it was. So that was actually accurate reporting and analysis on our end just from pattern recognition, which is a great skill and a trait to be able to have. Highly encourage that for anybody out there right now who's wondering, wow, how do they get some of this new stuff right before it's even reported or confirmed by anyone else? It's pattern recognition, something that you've got to be very good at to cover the news and fill in the blanks sometimes that you can't answer, but have prior examples that are very similar to be able to work off of. But this is once again,
the Russians are really lucky the thing didn't explode on the launch pad, considering all the malfunctions that missile has. Is if it had exploded on the launch pad with the full fuel load, it could have destroyed the entire area in Kapustin Yar. It could have just finished the whole thing off, possibly, which I had mentioned that earlier today on the short war video that I made, because it was literally just 4 or 5 hours ago. I just made a video covering the threat that this whole thing was posing with the IRBM being fired. And I was mentioning, I said, this thing could explode and that might save Ukraine from being hit by it, because it could just like blow up their entire launch pad at Kapustin Yar, and they better be glad it didn't, or otherwise that would have finished off that entire research site.
Probably so, but it isn't. The Oreshnik, usually when it fails in the silo. We haven't seen a lot of those explode. I think we only have 1 or 2 of them that have been reported to explode. I think you're thinking about the RS-28 Sarmat, which is the one that's had I think it's like 20% successful launch rate. And out of like the 6 tests or so, or 5 that have been conducted, 4 of them ended in catastrophic explosions on the pad or right up above the pad that literally would destroy the entire launch area. I think that's what you're thinking of, because I think we've heard of the Oreshnik failing 4 times, and 3 of those were failures in the silo that didn't lead to explosions, and one of them was an explosion above the silo, just a little bit off of the pad.
Maybe it could be possible. It's just there's so many Russian, missile failures. It's hard to keep up with which one it is. But none of them really have a good track record. Like there's some that are better, that are the best of the worst, I guess you could say. But none of them are really good. Like they're all splotchy.
Yeah, they definitely are. Like, a lot of modern Russian missiles are not reliable by any measure. Really, most modern Russian equipment of any type is not really reliable by any extent or measure that we've seen so far in the entirety of the war. But it does appear that at the moment we are still getting a little bit brief updates and little details of information that are coming out from the IRBM strike that was conducted within the Kyiv region on Bila Tserkva. And we've also been able to see additionally that near to the area of Israel, there was a decent amount of aerial tankers that went airborne. This is a rotation, by the way, because there's always someone out there who's saying that the U.S. Air Force activity is increasing, and every time they say that, it's just a tanker replacement that's going on over Israel. So it does appear that that is still ongoing at the moment. And we also were able to hear what appears to be some fighter jets over Israel somewhere, which we can hear in this clip right here.
I know Israel's itching. They're itching to get back to war. Honestly, I don't blame them, because as long as this threat of Iran goes unopposed and we start conceding to it, they're going to be so emboldened. They're going to start so much shit. Like, for once, like usually I'm not a huge fan of Israel's trigger happy like nature. Like they're very trigger happy. They like to like fight all over the place. It's just kind of the nature of the country, because they're surrounded by enemies. They want to fight. But in this case, though, I'm like, there is actually a fair argument for going back to war with Iran, because the Strait of Hormuz is choked up. You got the nuke problem that's still lurking around. It's literally the entire reason they launched the Operation Epic Fury was because of the nukes. None of that's been resolved. So I can understand Israel for once.
I definitely could. It's really something else to hear that apparently the U.S. is just willing to basically capitulate and walk away at this point from Iran. Because this isn't going to do us well at all. And I've seen some people arguing in the chat, well, it's not a U.S. defeat because, we blew up the Bat boat down in the Strait of Hormuz with a Hellfire, and therefore we weren't defeated. I want to remind y'all here of something really quickly. In war, there are losses. And you can win a whole bunch of battles and you can lose the war. Because let me ask you all this. Is the Islamic regime deposed? No, it's not. We killed an old man who looked like Santa Claus, who was a bastard, and the entire government that he ran is still there in Iran. Are they still working on nuclear weapons? Yes, they are. Are they still working on ICBMs to get those weapons to the United States once they're usable? Yes, they are. Are they still funding and operating terrorist forces throughout the whole Middle East? They are. So all 4 of our original war goals that we had, and also avenging the 40,000 who were massacred in early January, which is the 5th war goal, were not achieved whatsoever in this conflict if we concluded at the moment right now. Not only that, not only did we achieve those 5 war goals, but now we're walking away in a worse situation than the war even started in, to where now the Iranians are apparently going to be having de facto control over the Strait of Hormuz. 120 oil tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz every day, and around 27% of the world's oil is shipped through that passage on the daily. Now, from what we're understanding, the Iranians are going to have control over that strait, which means that whenever they become unhappy with us here in the United States, they can shut down that strait and jack up gas prices in the United States any day of the week and jack up oil prices globally until we end up bending to their demands. So not only did we end up ending this war, if this is truly the end at this point, not only did we end the war in an actual defeat as we achieved none of our actual war objectives, we're also being defeated by the fact that we have lost something that we originally had at the start of the war that nobody at the time even considered was a possibility for the Iranians to take over and directly control. So if we see that this war ends in the way it does right now, I would say that this is probably the worst military defeat strategically that the United States of America has faced in the 21st century without a shadow of a doubt. I would actually say throughout the entirety of the 20th and 21st centuries, because there has never been a defeat that the United States will have faced over the past 126 years that will end up being as economically damaging as this one if we walk away with a deal giving the current conditions basically de facto recognition as the norm now to be able to try and end this thing.
Yeah, it would be quite bad, I would say. At this point, I've given up on like trying to like make the argument anymore, because it seems like the U.S. is doing their own thing, like the officials and the leadership. So they're going to do whatever they want to do. I'm not sure if they're listening to people anymore, except for their own opinions. So we'll have to see what's happening with that. In the meantime, though, folks, like not to jump us back out of Iran for a second, but I am getting some more clips here which appear to show ammunition sites in Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine burning. I didn't really hear of Ukraine launching a counterattack. I guess they have. I just really hadn't heard about it yet. But we got some video coming out, apparently showing a fire at a pretty large ammunition depot. And I think I had one more video as well, but I don't have that one on hand. But we do have this video, so let's take a look.
And we are able to see the picture of the fire right there, and I think that's what you're talking about is the video, because that's all I can see on Twitter.
It should be at the top now. I just reposted it.
And so let's see if we can find. Here we are. And we hear secondary explosions and pops coming from over this fence and tree line.
Why does it sound like somebody like with a piece of sheet metal like whacking it back and forth?
Honestly, man, it sounds like someone really does have like a big sheet of tin and they're just slamming it on some like posts, like wooden posts, just slamming it in between them.
In all seriousness, though, it sounds like a whole bunch of 7.62 is burning off or burning out.
Kind of does sound like, it sounds like mostly small arms ammo, so it's probably a battalion-sized ammo dump in this town of Melitopol, which would be kind of odd because it's really far behind the lines, but it doesn't sound like a huge ammunition depot. It sounds like it was mostly for small arms ammo from what we could tell in that clip. But moving us on out of that, we do at the moment, I believe, have some additional stuff that we're trying to get onto. And Matthew, were you trying to get into anything here before we went to that clip from Melitopol?
So I've thought I had something else, but I don't have another clip. I'm waiting for more footage to come out because we are hearing apparently of a counterattack, and that's what that video right there suggests, that apparently Ukraine's counterattacking the Russian-occupied areas with drones most likely, but the footage is sparse. It's just sort of trickling right now, so I'm trying to find some more of it, but right now, though, it's not coming out, so I'll let you know when I get some more.
And so we will be waiting for some additional news at the moment. In the meantime, we were able to hear that near to the area of Venezuela today, we were able to see that the USS Lake Erie and the USS Iwo Jima amphibious support ship, or LHD, was present within the area off the coast of Venezuela near to Caracas. And we were also able to see that General Donovan of Southcom's area of responsibility was also in Caracas today as well, as MV-22 Ospreys were conducting some form of an emergency drill to evacuate U.S. personnel from the U.S. Embassy embassy, which has now been reopened and is now operational once again inside of Caracas, Venezuela. Outside of that, that's generally all of the news that we have to report at this moment so far, and right now we're still waiting for breaking news to come out on the other developments and situations that we've had at the moment. But I do have to say a humongous thanks and a shout out to everybody who has been watching so far during the show. We've been able to see that there has been a peak viewership tonight of 17.8 thousand people, and 130,000 people have watched this stream in the first hour in 20 minutes. I've got to say that on the behalf of both of us, we're entirely honored and greatly appreciative to know that so many of y'all continue to enjoy this channel and continue to consider it to be your primary source of news. If it wasn't for each and every single one of y'all, we wouldn't have a humongous audience to be able to report the news to, and we also have to thank massively everybody who supports the channel, because they help this thing to keep running day in and day out, making sure that our streams stay ad-free and sponsor-free, so that way we can try and get the news out to each and every single one of y'all without y'all having to even spend a second of y'all's time watching an ad. And so a humongous thanks to everybody who has been watching so far. We're still waiting for more news to come out, and we actually have some of this moment right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so there is some news that we've gotten from about an hour ago that we haven't gone over yet. I put it in the likes tab, by the way. There's a couple of different things. There was a large attack on Belgorod. We haven't gotten that footage yet, but also right here in the current footage. What was this one about in the caption, by the way, before we show that?
This was just the destruction of a grad MLRS.
Okay, yeah, and also I think there was another clip as well after this one of another GMLRS attack as well. We literally saw the moment the missile came in, which was crazy to see up close. Gopnik.
But we can see this BM-21 grad. This is one of the Russian army burning behind the lines after it had been hit by a Ukrainian FPV drone, most likely, which has destroyed the multiple launch rocket system, because that's what MLRS stands for. But moving us on from this clip, actually, speaking of which, we do have a little bit to cover in Belgorod, and also within the other areas of the Russian Federation as well that we did not get to yet, now that I'm remembering this, because for a moment I actually thought that we had covered all of that. Now that I'm really raking my brain, we hadn't. So getting on into it here, we were able to see that the Ukrainians did conduct a strike on Borisovka, and we were actually able to see the incoming HIMARS missile slamming into the deployment point in this clip. Observe.
Oh my god. Damn.
Here it is in slow motion. It's so fast I couldn't even pause it in time.
That's crazy. Was this the recruitment office?
It appears to be a temporary deployment point from what Warlife is saying, and I would assume that it's probably not a recruitment office, because Borisovka isn't really that big of a town. This is the size of it, and I don't really feel like a town like that would probably have a purpose-made recruitment office. They probably have to drive to the city in Belgorod for that. So it looks.
Okay. Yeah, there's another clip out there. I'm sure you have this one in the news segment here, but there's another clip in Belgorod where the Russians apparently had one of their registry offices target. There it is. Yeah, that's it right here.
We see the
was it a GMLRS that did this?
Yes, this was the same HIMARS missile, but like this post here, and this is kind of like the confusion here, they say it was a registry office, and then another post is saying that it was a temporary deployment center. And I would assume that's more so a temporary deployment center, because they're very close to the Ukrainian border, and this is kind of within the Vovchansk front. So I would assume that it's probably more so for that than a registry office.
Yeah, whatever the weapon was and whatever the location was, I mean, it was decimated. I mean, a huge crater in the ground, all the cars burned out. I mean, it was a destruction.
It really was. I mean, it was one hell of a hit. We see him looking around and showing the damage. A tire got blown clean off of a car. So did this bumper as well. This is like a pull-apart shop here. This HIMARS came in and started stripping these cars for spare parts. Damn, like this must be Romania or something like that. But still showing us a pretty significant hit within this area. Additionally, we also were able to see outside of the area of the Belgorod Oblast that down inside of the Kherson region, we also saw some clips of, well, more so reports of the incoming drones that are currently attacking Ukraine at this moment right now. We also were able to see that within the area of Novorossiysk, footage has now been released by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, showing not only did they attack the oil storage facility across the mountainside of Grusha via Balka, but they also conducted an attack on the Russian vessels that were stuck within the Vostochny Rayon last night. From what we understand, the Admiral Essen and a Bora-class missile hovercraft were targeted and hit during the midst of this attack last night, which unfortunately we never saw the explosions and damage in Vostochny Rayon in any of the footage or clips we got last night to be able to confirm this, but the Armed Forces of Ukraine has now cleared out that informational gap, and we have clear video evidence of this today. We can see here the first drone coming in for the Admiral Essen. We can now see another drone flying over a facility that's on fire, hitting air defenses within the area, including that OSA AKM. And we can now see them going in the full clip for the Admiral Essen, which is on the northern side of the Vostochny Rayon. This drone is flying towards the south in this footage. You see it coming on in. Right on the, we can't really tell if that hit the breakwater or the ship, but we can also see them now going after the missile hovercraft. Now, these are actually somewhat interesting. The Russians have some of these high-speed vessels, mind you all. They can travel at the speed of 70 miles an hour and are anti-ship missile carriers. Generally, one of these was actually hit and knocked out way back in the day, but we saw that the rest of them were able to evade generally and make their way to the Vostochny Rayon into survival for the remainder of the war. But we can see here that that vessel was also hit quite heavily as well, confirming another major hit. But that's the end of those clips, but still showing us the major hits and impacts that were caused within the port of Novorossiysk over the course of this day. We've also been able to hear of nothing else at the moment. That actually is everything that we had on the map before this show, and we're going to be waiting to see if we can get some further news and developments at this time. But before we get to that, we do have another question that's been asked of all of y'all about the Iran-U.S. agreement and what y'all's opinions, thoughts, and comments are on that at this moment right now. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So do you think the Iran-U.S. agreement that the U.S. president's currently talking about, do you think it'll be finalized soon, or what's going on with that? Because we need some help. We need some help with this analysis because we're not really sure. 59% said no, attacks are imminent soon. The deal will not be finalized. 21% said it's a 50-50 chance, and 11% said yes, it will be finalized soon. And this is a tough one, folks. It looks like the majority of folks in the live chat, they believe that the attacks are imminent soon and that the deal is simply a feint. That's what they think in the live chat. I'll be honest, I'm really not sure what to think at this point. There's so much confusion about this whole Iran-U.S. situation. It's hard to say. It sounds like they've reached a large percentage of understanding on the memorandum of understanding, which is, caveat upon caveat, to say the least. So I have a feeling that the deal is not going to be finalized, but they're making it sound like it's a done deal. They're making it sound like it's over with at this point. So the way I see it is if the U.S. does not attack this weekend, I would say the odds of attacks are starting to go downhill after this weekend. So if it doesn't happen, in the next 2 days, in the next 48 hours, then I would say they're probably going to make a deal, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm actually in the 50-50 group. I can't really say for certain what is going to be going on at this point because the insanity of how the U.S. government has been handling itself as of late is something that is hard to even measure or even comprehend, and also the destructiveness of its actions is also unbelievable to watch in real time. Not only have we suffered at this point a decent amount of economic damage here on the home front, with farm bankruptcies reaching 40% on average nationwide, and also a great deal of additional damage being seen to the trucking industry, with a large amount of small trucking companies basically folding due to the cost of rising diesel, and a myriad of other amounts of economic damage as well, including rising prices at the pump and everything else as well, generally showing that the economy has been slowing as of late. We're now seeing that we're going to cause the United States an untold amount of strategic damage in the decades to follow if we actually make some sort of an agreement like we're hearing of right now with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So not only did we see short-term damage as a result of this war, we're going to be seeing long-term damage as well, and we generally will have achieved absolutely nothing at this point. So either they have to continue attacks, because that's really our only option to see that this damage can be mitigated in the long term. That's really all we have left. I don't really know if they're going to be signing a deal. It would be absolutely ridiculous if they did try and sign a deal. But at this point, who in the hell even knows, to be entirely honest with you. Also, I'd have to be in the 50-50. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that in mind, it is time for us to get on and into a couple of questions because I believe we're starting to see a little bit of a lull in the news coverage here, and it's about time to get to talk to a couple of y'all. So what do we got, Matthew?
And real quick, we actually do have some more footage that just came out of Kyiv right now. We've gotten some footage appearing to confirm the hideous part of the whole thing. The Russians are targeting apartment blocks, high-rise buildings left and right. We're seeing a confirmed impact on like the 20th floor of a high-rise residential building. We are seeing that in one video. We're also getting another video showing the moment of multiple incoming Iskander impacts. This apparently is a supplementary video to the other one that we saw a moment ago. So we have about 3. So let's take a look at these.
All right, let's take a look at this blurred out clip showing an impact in Kyiv in an unknown location. There's a hit. And a secondary one, and a third one. Dang.
That's bad. That's really bad. That's in a dense area, too. Very densely populated.
We also were able to see some of the damage caused to one of the buildings, as it appears that an apartment had largely been destroyed on the 21st floor of this high-rise, most likely within northern Kyiv. And we also had additional footage as well in this third clip, once again showing the city being hit quite heavily by the incoming missiles and drones. We see the first hit here in this clip. But still showing us major hits hitting the city of Kyiv at this moment right now while we're live on air. A very unfortunate thing to see unfolding at this moment throughout the entirety of the region. But with that, it is time for us to move on out of our news coverage and get on into a couple of questions at this point. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so while we're still scanning for breaking news, we'll keep an eye out and we'll break to that immediately if we get some more news. But in the meantime, though, we'll answer some questions and get some super chats right now. So our first one goes to none other than Hackneys and Rhinelanders. And thank you very much, Hackneys, for being a longtime channel legend and supporting the channel with a $50 super chat. We do appreciate that very much. Hackney said, on behalf of everyone who would like to donate but isn't able to, special thank you for the tireless work in LSA.
And a humongous thanks to you for the support, Hackneys and Rhinelanders. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to spend tireless hours and work every single day to be able to try and make these shows possible. And I hope that this breaking news stream at this moment today has been a fairly exceptional one. I've been trying to keep the coverage a little bit more serious, considering that it's a breaking news story. And of course, on top of that, it's also one that is rather grave, to be entirely honest. But nevertheless, I do have to say a humongous thanks to you for enjoying the channel and supporting it, because it's folks like you who go out of their way to support this channel that help to make the entire thing possible. We do not run ads and sponsors on our live streams. It's entirely supported by the viewers who watch this show. And folks like you are the ones who make it possible for us to be able to pay our bills and keep our lights on behind the scenes to be able to cover news like this each and every single day. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $50 super chat from M60 Tanker, also another channel legend. And thank you very much, M60, for the $50 support. He said, terrific reporting tonight, Enforcer Bros, and love you guys. And also, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you like it, by the way, because we went live literally. This might be the quickest we've ever gone live on anything breaking. We went live within 25 minutes of the news breaking, and thankfully we were able to pull it together. And Enforcer was able to pull together the main news parts for the stream, and I was able to get some stuff reposted so that way we could cover it. So it was very quick today. So hopefully y'all appreciate that. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, it was really quick. Like, what's crazy, folks, is that somehow we got up on air in 25 minutes. And I put down like 20 bulletins or 15 or so of news. I'm not really sure how much. And then I also had 2 different drafts of thumbnails that we could have run on air, and we ended up choosing one. So it was actually a really quick time to get on air, considering that I had literally just gotten back to my house when this happened. I was getting out of my car and getting back in when this happened, and I immediately went from that to running the show in less than about 20 to 25 minutes. So not a bad running time at all as far as getting this thing on air. And I got to say a huge thanks to you, M60, for supporting the channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because folks like you help us to be able to get on the ball like that and really get to covering news each and every single day, and doing this as our primary job. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on the next one.
Also have a super chat from Jennifer Collier. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for that $20 support. And Jennifer said, thanks, guys. And as always, you're on top of it, and I'm grateful.
And a huge thanks to you for the support. And we're happy to hear that a lot of people have been enjoying it tonight. We have been trying our best to make sure that these shows run almost immediately as soon as something happens. And today was no exception. Probably one of the quickest that we've ever done. And I've got to thank you so much for that once again and supporting the channel, because you helped to make this entire thing possible for everybody who's watching, and for both Matthew and me to be able to keep running this thing. And so a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let's take a break from the super chats here for a second. We are getting some more news right here. This is also, I believe, coming out of Melitopol as well, and it is coming out of Melitopol. It appears to be that that attack was not only hitting an ammunition depot, but it also hit apparently a Russian supply truck as well. It looks like we have it looks like a mangling of a supply truck here. So go grab this off the Twitter and let's see this.
And let's see if we can take a look at this here real quick, folks, because it does look like there was an ammunition truck. This might have been the actual fire that we were watching. I don't think there's anything left. Doesn't look like it.
There's the cab right there.
I mean, this
guy, why did this guy floor it out of the blue?
I think he just got panicked. You know, vodka hit him real hard, like, or something. I don't know.
Несколько машин, блин. Ё-моё. Ой, блин, несколько машин, ё-моё.
Pretty interesting to see. It does look like the Ukrainian long-range strikes are continuing day and night on Russian logistics at this point. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here, while we keep scanning for breaking news, goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. And thank you very much, AMX10, for that $20 support. And they said Ukraine needs THAAD.
I would say that generally that, unfortunately, would be a bit of a national security risk to give them a THAAD, due to the possibility that it could fall into the hands of the Russians if somehow it was captured or spied upon while in their territory. And generally, proprietary technologies like the F-22, the THAAD, and other more advanced systems generally have to remain within the United States. I'm all for supporting Ukraine, but I'm not also for possibly jeopardizing national security interests to try and support them. But a big thanks to you for supporting AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang and helping this channel to keep on running. And holy moly, what's that, Matthew? What's that?
Holy moly. Trism 666 just threw in a $500 super chat to the channel, by the way. A massive thanks to Trism. That is insane, by the way. That is literally the most that YouTube will let someone put in a super chat, in a single super chat. So massive thanks, by the way. I can't even say how much grateful we are for that super chat. And Trism said, thank you for all you do and keep up the great work and get some snacks and drinks in case this becomes a long one in LSA.
And a huge
And thank y'all for everybody that's dropped in tonight. I really appreciate it, man. It's been a great show. We didn't get no call-ins for tonight. Hopefully tomorrow night we will. If we get any more breaking news, we will be on air tomorrow evening at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. If we don't get no breaking news, we'll just be on the original show at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time tomorrow night. Don't miss it. Live call-ins tomorrow night. Don't miss it. Be there. Be square. Like, follow, and subscribe. Oh, this is a lone wolf, man. We had a lot going on tonight. We shootings in DC, missiles flying in Kyiv, and ports being bombed, and also Lebanon being bombed. So, Rumble, I apologize. You didn't get the full show of tonight. I didn't see that I did not start Rumble until almost an hour in. So if y'all want to finish watching the rest of the show, beginning of the show, and what's going on, but y'all started at a good point. Let's go over to another platform, either YouTube, Twitch, or Kick, and you can see the beginning of the show there as well, and you can drop a follow and subscribe there as well. But anyways, I hope y'all had a wonderful night, and I hope y'all prayers out to the victims of the strikes in Kyiv.